Welcome back to Let's Cruise Part 2. Discover the wonderful world of cruising with Enjoy the View Travel. All right, so once you have decided which cruise you'd like to go on, the next step in the process is deciding what stateroom selection you would like to have. So on an ocean cruise, there is interior, ocean view, balcony, and then suites. Your interior and ocean view are going to be your most budget friendly. And then you have balcony. There are typically a couple of options in balcony, starting with basically your standard balcony room, and then usually going up to a deluxe balcony. And usually they will consider a deluxe balcony like your aft balcony. Aft balconies tend to go first. They are the most limited of the balcony rooms, so they tend to go first. And then you have your suite. All of these photos that you see here are from Princess Cruise Line. They are on the Enchanted Princess with your interior room, your balcony room, and then that is the Sky Suite. And so it is showing you from outside. That is the balcony for the Sky Suite. It's a 2-bedroom suite. It is not the most budget friendly. Suites will run you a lot higher. There are usually some perks that come along with being in a suite class stateroom. So you have to kind of weigh your pros and cons on what you're looking for. So the next thing you want to think about in selecting your stateroom is what part of the ship you would like to be in. So there's 2 different areas that you need to think about. First off, you have the forward of the ship, which is the front. You have midship, which is the middle, and then you have aft, which is the back of the ship. Now, there are some in between. There's a mid-aft and a mid-forward as well. If you are someone who gets seasick easily, my recommendation is always in midship because it is considered to be the most stable. Then you have to think about what deck you want to be on. The lower the deck, I feel like the more movement that you feel. So again, I would want to stay kind of mid-deck. So you want to look to see how many decks the ship has, and you kind of want to be kind of in the middle. You also want to think about what is above you and what is below you. If you are in a room that has the pool deck above you, you can expect that early in the morning, you're going to hear them moving the chairs around because they pull the chairs in at night and they put them back out in the morning. Same thing with the evening. You would hear them putting the pool chairs up in the evening. So that's something to think about. If one of the dance clubs is above you, you have to think about that. How late is the dance club open? How much noise are you going to hear from that? Or if you're underneath a bar, same thing. So you also want to look at what is above you and what is below you. I always try to, depending on the type of room that my clients are looking for, I try to make sure that there are staterooms above and staterooms below. Sometimes that's not an option based off of the room type that they are wanting and what is available still. So you have to weigh your pros and cons, and sometimes you have to give up something. So think about that. So those are all things that we want to think about in stateroom selection. You've picked your cruise. You've picked your stateroom. I have sent you your quote. You're ready to book. What does that mean? So the first thing we have to do when booking is we have to get travelers' information. So everyone that is traveling with you, some of the important things are member numbers. If you are a part of a loyalty program with any of the cruise lines, then you'll need to have your member number ready so that we can enter that. We do have options to look those up as well, but it is usually a lot easier if you already have your number. We'll need the date of birth for each of the travelers, as well as their name as it is shown on their passport or document of choice that you are taking. You'll need their gender and their age, and also the bed configuration. If it's, 2 friends who are going who want to share the room and they want the beds broken apart into twin beds, or if it's a couple that is going and they want them put together as the queen bed. And then usually if you're going in a configuration that has an upper and lower berth, which is the bed, uh, usually you don't have a lot of options there because when you have upper berths that are down, it doesn't usually tend to allow for a queen bed on some cruises. Some of them it will allow that, but most of them it won't. So you have to think about bed configuration because we can add that on there. However, we can go back and change that if we need to. It's not like a set in stone once you put it in there. So it can be changed. And then the deposit. So there's a minimum deposit that is needed to book your cruise. Um, Deposits are determined by the cruise line, and often they will run specials. So, for example, right now, I checked on a Princess cruise this morning, and deposit was $100 per person. It's not always that way. Sometimes it's $200 a person. Sometimes it's $250. And on certain cruise lines, I have seen it as high as $500 a person. So it'll just vary per cruise line, and if they're running specials or not at that time. My client who booked her cruise to the British Isles back earlier in January, they were having the $100 per person special then as well. And sometimes that special or that perk for a lower deposit is because you're doing it through a travel advisor and it's a perk that our company is offering. So sometimes it's that way as well. So you may go and look on the cruise line website and they're showing a larger deposit, whereas I'm saying that you only have to do $200 today for you and your passenger. So that's something you have to think about as well. Now, a deposit is a minimum payment that you need to put down. However, if you want to pay more at that time, you can definitely do that. And then also remember that typically your final cruise payment is due 2 or 3 months before your sail date. So if you are booking a last minute cruise, then you may not have a deposit. You may have to pay the full balance when you book that cruise, if it's within that 3-month window. So then you want to think about that as well if you're booking last minute. So to book, all we have to have is the deposit, traveler's information, and then you can start specializing your cruise and getting to the fun stuff. I told you we would get to the fun stuff, and we will, starting in part 3. But to round out part 2, let's talk about travel documents for just a minute. So you will need to have your travel documents ready to show at the port when you check in. And you also need them to enter back in to the United States. So when you disembark the ship. However, you typically do not have to show them. I would just have them where I could get to them easily, just in case. But typically, you do not have to show them. Also, remember that documents are always subject to change without notice, which is another reason why I always suggest passport, because at any point in time, they could change that rule. And if you don't have your passport with you and you get to the ship and they say, well, the rule was changed 2 weeks ago and you have to have your passport now, guess what? You don't have your passport. Guess what? You don't get to cruise. So I know that a passport is an expense, but do remember passports are good for adults for 10 years. They are good for children for 5 years. So when you spread that payment out over time, it's actually not so bad. And good news from the passport department, they are turning passports out much faster than they have been since COVID. So people are starting to get them in a more timely manner. So that is excuse me, wonderful news. Okay. So I do highly recommend passports for any cruise. Okay. Sometimes you are going to need a visa depending on the country that you are sailing to. So you'll want to contact the embassy for the countries that you're sailing to see if there is a visa requirement. Typically, I can easily give you that information. That is one of the services that I provide when you book with me, is that I can give you all that information if you're going to be required to have a visa. There aren't a lot of cruise destinations that require a visa, but there are a few. So let's talk those other documents. So we talked about a birth certificate, then on a closed loop cruise, that it, according to your cruise lines, that you can use that. But there is a disclaimer in, because I went and looked at Celebrities rules. And so there's a disclaimer in there that, however, flights to Mexico and Canada, because those are some of the cruises that you can sail on a closed loop. If you have to have a flight from those, you have to have a passport. So keep that in mind. Another reason why I always suggest that you have a passport. You may be required to show inoculation records, family legal documents. I had somebody ask me about this, about what that meant. And so if you are traveling with a minor, and let's say that the parents are divorced, then the other parent has to provide a letter stating that they know that this parent is taking their child on a cruise out of the country and that they have their permission. Even though you may both have shared custody, it's just a legal document. You'll want to have it notarized as well. It's just a legal document showing that in case anything were to come up. I always like to provide the just in case. Okay. Also, let's say that your family is going on a cruise and you have children, and one of your children has invited a friend to go along. Then you will need documentation from that family stating that it is okay that their child is traveling with you. And I always like to say that you can make medical decisions while they are with you. Those are very important things to have. Also have that notarized. So you want to have that. And then just to let you know, some forms of identification that are not accepted: voter registration cards and social security cards. Those are not acceptable forms of U.S. citizenship for exiting and entering the country for cruise purposes. So keep those in mind. So those are the travel documents that you might need or will need while you are on your cruise. And if we need to discuss them any further, we obviously can, depending on your cruise, because it's individual for everyone. But just my disclaimer, if you don't have a passport yet, go ahead and get your passport, especially if you are thinking about sailing on a cruise this year or next year. Go ahead and get it done and have it. Again, for adults, it's good for 10 years. For children, it's good for 5 years. Also, something else to think about: if you are flying, if you fly often, or if you do not want to have the hassle of taking all of your liquids out, taking your laptop out, taking your shoes off, taking your belt off, all those things, then you can do TSA pre-check. I just did this, and in December, the end of December, and I got my information and everything back the first part of January. It was very quick, very easy. I believe it was $78, and that's good for 5 years. So I do not have to go through the regular TSA lines anymore. I get to go through the TSA pre-check. Now, I will give you a caveat to that more and more people are doing the TSA pre-check. So apparently those lines are getting a little bit longer, but supposedly you're not supposed to be in line longer than 10 minutes. So we'll see. I will test that out in March for you and let you know how it went versus the regular TSA lines that I should be able to see from the pre-check line. So I will keep you updated on that information. And then be sure to go down and like on YouTube for us. Like and subscribe to our channel. I'm going to be putting out a lot more videos this year and getting used to all of this. We have 2 cruises coming up so far, and in March and in June, and so those will be put up on there as well. And then I plan to put a lot of other stuff up this here as well. So please make sure you subscribe to our channel, and we will see you in part 3 coming up next week.